Hi, I'm Dr. Todd Lizon from Lifestyle Integration. Over the last 16 years, I've been working as a chiropractor, nutritional balancing practitioner, and stress management consultant. I've published numerous articles online, a couple of books, and posted countless videos on YouTube about all kinds of topics related to stress, health, and well-being. And I can tell you that I'm more excited today to be bringing you this new program in Discovery than I have been about anything I've done in the previous 16 years. Lord Nelson once said, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. If you can't measure your stress, how are you going to improve it? And that's what I'm going to share with you today. We now have the tools and technology available to measure stress and then assess if what you're doing is actually working or not. This is groundbreaking new ways of looking at stress and stress management. There are two primary tools that we use. One is called heart rate variability, or HRV for short. HRV is designed to measure your stress in the short term. It measures your stress right now. And I'll explain to you in more detail about how it does it and what it does in a little bit. But suffice for now to say that it measures it in the short term, and then you can apply techniques to immediately calm it down and bring yourself back to normal. And that's primarily with deep breathing. So it's a real-time, immediate correction. The second technology that we use is to measure stress over the long term. We need to measure stress immediately, but we can't measure it all the time. So we need to know what our long-term averages are so we can make more corrections. And the best way to measure long-term stress is by doing a tissue biopsy. In this situation, a hair tissue mineral analysis. This measures stress over the long term, and I'll explain it a little bit more down a little bit later in this video. But it's measuring long-term stress so you can make the corrections. And in this situation, the corrections are primarily done with the use of specific targeted supplements so that you're getting the right supplement in the right amount for you as an individual, because not everyone is going to be needing the same thing at the same time. And then what we've done that's truly unique is we've taken these two individual techniques and studies that have been around for 20, 25 years each. So they're proven technologies, but no one has ever brought them together. And the HRV has previously only been available in labs, and only in the last year or two has come out of the labs and available for you and I. So you can see what we've done is we've put together simple, easy to use, effective stress management plans and programs that can be done virtually anywhere, anytime, by anyone, no matter how stressed out they may or may not be. What got me involved in this is really quite interesting. And a number of years ago, over 10 years ago, I was living in Canada. I owned a couple of chiropractic clinics, and I was doing what I thought was pretty typical at the time, which was work, work, work. The more hours, the better. I was really into sort of volume, not necessarily quantity. And I had visions of trying to create bigger things. I wanted to have multiple clinics. I was in discussion with a partner to try to create a chiropractic chain of clinics that would be within some gyms and fitness centers. And it was just go, go, go all the time. I wasn't paying attention to my own advice. As a health professional, you would have thought I would have known better. But just because you know something doesn't mean you're necessarily going to do anything about it. And I certainly wasn't measuring it. So I just kept on going. And at the end of it all, I burnt myself out a bit. I got stressed. I ended up with an infection, quite a bad infection actually. And it ended up laying me up in bed for 2 days with fevers and chills. And for those of you that are workaholics or know one or have been around one, to not go to work, you have to be really unwell, and I was. The third day, dragged myself out of bed, went off to work, barely made it through the day, home sort of dragging my tail between my legs on the way home. And I slept on the couch that night because I didn't want my wife to catch what I had, and I just still wasn't quite feeling right. And I fell asleep, and a couple hours after being asleep, I woke up with a bit of a sensation on the chest, and I thought, oh, that's a little bit odd. I haven't had that before. It must be associated with the cold. Maybe it's in the lungs or chest or something like that. And I fell back asleep. A couple hours after that, I woke up again, and I have to say the sensation was really quite strong. I was 33 at the time. It was really right in this area here. So I thought, well, maybe that's indigestion. And I had the funny thought, it's funny now, that if this is indigestion, I've been giving people with indigestion not enough respect, because this is horrible, this really hurts. And I thought, oh, this is no good, but I fell back asleep. The third time I woke up, I knew there was something dramatically wrong. You know something's wrong when it feels like someone's standing on your chest. I woke my wife, woke up our 3 daughters, made the trip into the hospital, and after a few tests, they put some nitroglycerin under my tongue, and I knew that was it. And they came out and they said, yeah, you've had a heart attack. You can imagine, 33, that's pretty big news. I took it hard. I really took it hard. And I looked at my lifestyle, I looked at my stress, and even though I didn't know necessarily what to do, because unfortunately no one had laid out a plan on how to get from point A to point B and what all the steps were, but I knew I had to change a few things, and we did. Got out of the chiropractic clinics, and we actually moved. We moved from Canada to Australia in part to create a lifestyle, which has been wonderful. And that helped. Everything has been going really, really well. Moved here, I had a practice, I didn't own it, I just went in and did things, and it was great. But things were still not quite right. I certainly wasn't measuring my stress. I didn't know if all my techniques were working or not. So I just was up in the air. And I kept working, and eventually in my clinic one day, a guy came in who, at best I can basically explain, he's an amateur researcher. And he laid down a DVD for me, and this DVD had some MP3s in it, and it had a whole bunch of DVD books. And he said, here, read these. And I thought, well, that's a pretty big ask, but I said to him, I said, all right, I'll look at it. And he came back the next time and asked if I'd looked at it, and I said no. And he's going on about copper excess in the population and epigenetics and xenoestrogens, and he just was going on. And I said to him, I said, look, I'll have a look for next time. And I did. And the short of it all is that was my introduction to hair tissue mineral analysis. I have never looked back since. That was such an insight and such an eye-opener into understanding individual biochemistry and individual responses to stress, and then knowing how to put together the corrective programs for that individual aspect. So that was a great insight. But as I said at the beginning of this video, this insight to me is even bigger, more exciting than that insight at the time. And what ended up happening is I was still thinking, well, how can I help people? We got to measure, what's going on with stress right now. People want to know how to correct their anxiety, how to correct their panic attacks, how to correct all these different things. And I knew the nervous system was tied into the stress response. Anyone in the medical field knows that they're linked in, together. But I didn't know how to actually use that to measure it. You had to go to the labs, it was very expensive, and I was always brainstorming in the back of my mind, how can you actually measure this stuff? And one day I had that sort of epiphany where it hit me. I was just lying down in the hammock, just sort of having a bit of a rest, and it hit me about this heart rate variability. And I got on the computer and I'm entering it in, and one thing led to another, and I realized that you can now do heart rate variability with a simple heart rate monitor and an app and a phone, a smartphone. And I thought, wow. And honestly, that moment is when things just absolutely changed, because I had the realization that now we have the availability to measure this stuff. We can measure your stress. You, right now, whatever you're doing as you're watching this video, we could hook you up with just a few simple basic things in your hand and measure your stress. I can tell you whether you're in a stress state or in a relaxed state. And if you're in a stress state, we could then tell you what to do to calm it down. That is huge. Real-time stress assessment that allows for biofeedback techniques like deep breathing to be applied is huge. And my sort of getting everything tied in together was realizing that, hey, we want to get from point A to point B. If we can't measure it, you can't improve it. And I went, wow, now we can measure this. Short-term measurement, long-term measurement, put the program together and help people get from point A to point B. And I have done nothing but focus on this for the last number of months and getting this program together and getting this ebook together for everyone to benefit from, because I firmly believe that this is going to revolutionize the way we assess stress and the way we manage stress. The ebook we've put together really dives deep into understanding everything about stress, the stress response, explaining in a lot more detail about hair analysis and HRV and putting together what the actual program is. And I would love for each and every one of you to download and get that ebook and benefit from that. But it would be helpful, I'm sure, to dive just a little bit deeper here so that you can understand right now a little bit more about what these two technologies are and what they bring to the discussion about stress management. And I think we can start off with HRV. And HRV stands for heart rate variability, and for many, many years people have been using heart rate variability to assess stress in the labs. And what it actually is it's measuring the time between two heartbeats. And a lot of you might think that the heartbeat is very consistent, sort of like a metronome when you're learning music, and that it beats very consistently each and every time, the same sort of distance between beats. And it couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, if you have that consistency all the time, that's a very inflexible heart rate, and when you're under stress, you will be not handling it very well. So what we know from research is that the higher the heart rate variability, the healthier the person and the more they're able to cope and manage stress. And that makes sense because if a crocodile jumps out at you, you need your heart to very quickly speed up and then come back down. You need the flexibility to deal with this stress in life. So this heart rate variability is now measurable with these chest heart rate monitors and the app that we would be recommending that you use along with your Apple phone. So that in and of itself is gold because it tells you what your level is, and they've checked the norms over the years for where someone should be. So as we get older, our HRV lowers, and if it lowers too much, we end up being very much at risk of the stress degenerative diseases and heart cardiovascular disease, etc. So that is gold in and of itself. But there's actually another aspect which is, to me, even more fascinating. So it gets a bit technical, but we've got what's called time frequencies, or time domains, and frequency domains. The time domain is the time between the beats. The frequencies is as it sounds. It's a frequency that you pick up. And it turns out that the autonomic nervous system, which is, don't panic, that's your fight or flight response. Crocodile jumps out at you, you have this fight or flight response. And interestingly, it doesn't matter whether it's a crocodile or a fight or a chemical stress like mercury, your body responds the exact same way every single time. You will get the stress response when something stresses you out. And what happens is the sympathetic branch, the fight or flight branch, will be elevated. That makes sense. When you're under stress, your sympathetics will rise to help you deal with the stress. Our book explains this really well. It rises. The parasympathetics is what puts the brake on that. It's the opposite. It tends to calm that response down. What this HRV does is it will show you in real time, in your palm, what your sympathetics are doing and what your parasympathetics are doing. And that is invaluable. And when we graph it and map it and use it for real-time correction and for longer-term correction, that's where the magic occurs. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So HRV and looking at the time domain and the frequency domains is huge in winning this sort of fight against stress and stressful lifestyles. The other technology is the hair tissue mineral analysis. And as I said, the stress response is clear. Physiologically, clear-cut, no debate. We know what happens. I talk about it in the ebook in quite a bit of depth, so you can get a little bit more detail there. But from a hair analysis, just so that you can understand how this works, when you're stressed and you produce your stress hormones, one of those is called aldosterone. Aldosterone has the effect of raising the sodium in the tissues, not the blood. It's not, blood tests are not going to show this, in the tissues. And that's why a hair tissue analysis is so important, because it's measuring the stress over time. And when you get sick, it's not happening in the blood, it's happening in the tissues. So the tissue is a representative tissue so that we don't have to go about taking bits and pieces of kidney and liver and things like that. So 3 centimeters of hair is measuring 3 months of time, so you're getting that 3-month average. So going back to the stress response, just so that I'm clear with everyone, stress happens, sodium level in the tissue goes up, and correspondingly, the calming sedative minerals like calcium and magnesium will, of course, go down. You're under stress. You're going to use those up. So they're going to go down and the sodium's going to go up. So when you see this on a hair tissue analysis, you can correct it. In other words, you can prescribe specific supplements for specific states of stress. And that's the magic, is it's not one size fits all. That's garbage. It's not guessing what supplements to take. That's also not going to get you anywhere very fast. If anything, it might make you worse. We're measuring and reassessing and changing the supplements that people need as they go. So those two technologies are absolutely critical in understanding what we can do to measure stress. And when you bring them together, you've got a wonderful way of assessing, monitoring, and making sure that the stress management programs are actually working. So our program consists of the ebook. It consists of the hair tissue mineral analysis and then the recommendations on what to do with respect to that. It consists of using the HRV on an ongoing basis so that we can do the proper feedback tools and corrections as well. And it also consists of a couple of other aspects where we will track and monitor your progress and offer a few other suggestions, tips, and tools as well. Now, one thing that we've designed this program around is for busy people. See, ideally, if you're stressed, I can say to you, well, just get rid of your stress. You know, that's the ideal scenario, just get rid of it. But the reality is, in this modern day and world, and even in years past, if you've got a child who's on drugs, you can't necessarily just get rid of that. If you've got a debt, you can't just necessarily get rid of that. So we have to acknowledge that some stresses we can't get rid of now. We can usually come up with longer term plans, and I would encourage you to do that. But there are just some stresses we can't get rid of right now. So let's look at our lifestyles as being like a bank account. And bank accounts need deposits and they need withdrawals. Now your withdrawals are represented by the stresses you can't get rid of and all the other things you need to do on a daily basis. If your withdrawals outweigh your deposits, you will initially run a deficit. You might not, to use the analogy here, you might not physically feel bad while you run a deficit, but it's a deficit nonetheless. It's not good for you. It's not building up your health. And then after time, as that goes on, that deficit will turn into bankruptcy. We need to get rid of the withdrawals where you can, but where you can't, we need to increase the deposits. That's why I believe this program will help most people watching, because it's simple. It's not time consuming. You don't need to get rid, I'm not telling you to get rid of all of your stresses, because I know that you can't or won't get rid of all of your stresses yet. So what we're trying to help you do is measure. Measure what's going on, make more deposits, and see how you go. Because if it's working, you're going to find that your HRV is going to climb, you're going to find your hair analysis is going to improve, and that everything's improving. And then you know that you can continue on doing what you're doing. But if it's not working, then you're going to see that your HRV stays the same, your hair analysis stays the same. And then you can keep adding deposits, but you may reach the conclusion that other things need to change eventually. And we'll help you with that. But right now, this program is for busy people, moms, dads with kids, professionals, retirees that are just stressed and don't know what to do. It's for people that want to get from point A to point B in a simple, effective, cost-effective way. And that's what we've done by bringing it all together and connecting the dots. In the past, if you were to get a hair analysis, it would cost you a couple $100, and they still have a cost to them. But the HRV in the past is really where the cost was. You'd have to be in the labs, it would cost you a couple $1,000s. We're really lucky now that that's not the situation. So we don't need to pay thousands of dollars anymore to find out where we are with the measurement. We don't have the inconvenience of having to go to the lab to get it all done. We can do it all at home. So the HRV now, what we do in our package, and you'll read about it in the book and you'll get all the information, is we send you the heart rate monitor, which is usually about $100 or even a little bit more. You have your phone and you have your app, and you're up and you're running. Breathing doesn't cost anything. There's a couple other little things you can do, as we said, with the supplements and some other little tips and techniques, but you get an idea of what our program is. It includes the HRV, it includes the hair analysis, it includes the tracking and monitoring, which is critical if you're going to have the success. All of these things, and the ebook it includes. So you get all of these things, and it doesn't cost, like I said, any more thousands. It actually is only costing $299. So that's our program. I realize fully that some of you might not be comfortable enough, or you might want to do more due diligence, you might want to look into things a little bit more. That's great. Get our ebook. Read it. Then, if you have questions, come back to us. I love questions. Send me an email. The email is on this webpage, and you can send me a question. I'm more than happy to spend some time trying to explain everything to you to make sure that you're comfortable. Once you're comfortable, once you're confident, then you can put the program into play. That's what I'm hoping you get from this video and from this program. There's an awful lot of benefits, an awful lot of things you can gain, and you have very, very little to lose at this point in time by certainly getting the ebook and hopefully starting the program. So with that, I think we're complete. If anyone has questions, let me know, but we are here to serve you. We are here to help you with this program. As I said, I'm so excited about this, more excited than I am about anything else. So until next time, remember, things don't change, we do.